Hi everyone, Paul Pulver from Elevate Your AIQ. We are live at HR Tech 2025, and I have the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Ken Matos from HiBob, which appropriate. You get to talk to.
It's a good name.
Bob, yeah. Thanks so much for taking some time to talk to me. I was really intrigued by some of the work that you guys are doing in obviously in the employee experience space, but AI is coming fast and furious. I'm sure you see that in all your research. And so there's a lot of impacts to the organization as a whole, to individuals, regardless of sort of role and seniority. And so I thought we could just, unpack some of the data that you're, sifting through and looking for insights, for uh, internal use for your customers and how you just sort of see the market and the insights that you're publishing. So yeah, I just thought we could dig into that, but maybe just a little bit about your background first.
Absolutely. So I'm the director of market insights at HiBob. I'm an organizational psychologist by training. So did my PhD in IO psychology at George Washington University, then spent the next, is it like 25 years, moving from government research to nonprofits to for-profit organizations, primarily focused on HR, engagement, and organizational structure.
Awesome. So the scope of your team, how big is your team, and what are some of the key, sort of strategies that you are working towards?
So my team consists of 4 people focused on what's going on in the world of HR tech. So whether that be analyzing what competitors and similar organizations are doing, trying to get ahead with thought leadership and original research that understands what's going on, or listening to third-party voices and integrating that into our independently created perspectives.
Nice. Okay. One of the things that I think a lot about is AI literacy and readiness. And so some of that is skills, some of that, of course, is tools, and there's certainly no shortage of those. And then, mindsets and how people, how ready are people to actually change the nature of the work that they do, not just, make themselves more efficient, perhaps, but how do you truly sort of augment you as a whole human, and how do we take a human-centric lens of all the ways in which we use AI so that we're using it thoughtfully, fairly, and that we are uh, thinking about how our impact as an individual, but then, you're part of a team, you're part of an organization. How do we sort of embrace all of this? So how do you think through some of those things?
So I think the first thing that springs to mind is back when AI first landed on the scene. One of the things that struck me was how quickly organizational leaders jumped on the bandwagon of now we can reduce our labor costs. And that just set everybody up with a mindset of like, okay, it's now me against this tool rather than this is a tool I get to use.
Yep.
And so I think that has colored a lot of the conversation. And so moving from that place to one that's much more focused on augmenting really begins with having the conversation start with what is it you can do that is not repetitive techniques that AI is really good at, rather than how can I get rid of the cost of you doing it.
Right.
And so I think anything that solves the problem really has to start with that mindset, and then be able to start unpacking like what is it that you could do differently if I released more of your time, or I enabled you to sort through more content faster. That then allows you to start taking a people-centric approach because you're thinking about what is it that this person can do when they are no longer doing this job, as opposed to how much money will I save when I'm no longer paying this person to do this job.
Yeah, I think that when I've gone through this exercise at the last big organization that I worked at, it was really, I feel like they kind of did take the latter, approach, because it was, well, we were doing this on behalf of the CIO, who reported to the COO, and of course the COO wants to see the numbers, right? So it was really, for me, it was a sort of, I guess, a good learning experience about how to sort of frame savings and opportunity in the right way, such that you're getting credit for headcount equivalent costs or whatever. But there are a lot of intangibles, and there's other aspects that we need to think about. Um, so, but I do think there's a lot to unpack as far as how people think about um, the best way to reinvest. How do I tell the right story so that I'm reinvesting, um, the time saved and whatever. And to your point, like what else could people be doing? I think that in some ways points to, the skills conversation to say, what are people capable, if I free up 20% capacity or whatever, what else are people capable of doing if I were to give them the agency to.
And the training as well, because I think one of the things we go back and forth on is like, is AI going to eat jobs? Is AI going to augment jobs? And I think the reality is it's going to do both. If we look at history and compare, say, AI to the word processor, what it did to the steno pool is what it's probably going to do to a lot of jobs that are themselves augments of another person.
Yeah.
And so I think one part of it is who are the augmenters now? And if they were actually doing that job from the beginning, does that create new profit opportunities? So could our business be bigger if people who used to be infrastructure to support a small number of project leaders became project leaders themselves? And how do we actually get them to that point?
Yeah.
So is that retraining? Is that simply opportunity? I think that becomes also part of the game. And so it's an end-to-end piece of both the learning and redeployment, along with what could the business do if we had these talents going to other places. But like not just what's another task they could do, but what is the business now empowered to pursue a different product line, to go into a different market. Those things are the questions that then become real profit and value centers rather than cost cutting.
So are there specific elements of that sort of, I guess, like how you basically enable that type of growth, that innovation? Are there specific outcomes, I guess, that you pull in to say this would be a successful, sort of pivot or redeployment plan or things like that?
Yeah. So the presentation I'm actually going to be giving at HR Tech is really focused on that exact question.
Okay.
I think one of the things that we need to start with is what is the impact that we want to have? So the example I use is an AI training program. We all say people need to be trained. Great. Why? What are you hoping these people will do with this trained skill? In the example, I talk about speeding up development time. So if you're a tech company and you want to get a product to market faster, the faster employees can get things done, the more money you can eventually make from selling it. So if you combine that with finance tools, you can calculate how much you would make if you were in market, say, 2 months earlier.
Yep.
And see what their average development time becomes after people are trained.
Okay.
And there you have a very clear return on investment for an AI training.
Yep. In terms of that type of like learning, upskilling, AI literacy, how are organizations doing? Are they doing a good job? Because I feel like there's still a lot of work to do there.
No, I think what we're seeing is a lot of organizations are throwing AI at people rather than taking a slower pace. I think the FOMO is causing them to just be like, here's AI, use it and create value and show me what value you gave.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, I don't know how to do that.
Right.
I think the organizations that are doing it best are taking a much more deliberate approach and saying, okay, you all are doing experimentation, and from those experiments, we will actively pull particular things that are creating key points of value, either speeding up workflows or processes. The research that I've seen says that AI is being primarily used to things that are easy on the P&L sheet, so sales and marketing numbers. but not where there's actually measurable change in business process. So finance workflows, HR workflows.
Yeah.
And so I think you really need to dig into what is it we want to achieve in the first place in order to show that kind of value.
Yeah. I do think I understand that part of getting people comfortable is showing what's in it for them and showing that, this is going to help, you personally. But then I think to your point, you've got to understand, well, what else do I know to help contribute to team effectiveness? What else do I need to do to make sure my organization takes advantage of, growth opportunities? And so, but I also think I describe this as sort of you've got to play offense, meaning growth, innovation, reimagining how work can be done. But then what I consider defense is like the risk mitigation, the responsible AI, literacy that says, especially in talent acquisition, but really everyone can.
Everywhere is a potential leak somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. So I do think that's important for people to think about. Like, to me, it seems like only a matter of time before part of your onboarding and your compliance training is, you already do data privacy, you already do cybersecurity, and this is just another sort of module.
Yeah.
And the same thing from an infrastructure perspective, it's another sort of layer where you need sort of continuous monitoring for those kinds of risks. So, so there's some element of literacy I feel is important for people to make sure that they're being, for a vendor like HiBob, I mean, it's important on the development side to be responsible by design. And so there's nobody that shouldn't take that kind of training, whether you're a leader, you're a builder, you're a user. I feel like there's some elements of that AI readiness and literacy that are universal.
So I think part of what we need to be clear on is what people are expected to do with AI. So if we're expecting everyone to effectively be a vibe coder, that is a very different landscape of what everyone needs to be trained on versus AI is something that exists out of your platform. Like you have a chat GPT and you might need to dump data into it. You absolutely need your privacy training. If the AI is embedded in an existing secured platform like HiBob, where we're already thinking about how do we make sure that there's appropriate role access to data and appropriate privacy, it becomes an even different scenario. Less what can I access, what am I copying and pasting, and more about how do I talk about what it shows me.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So you're working on some research now that gets into some of the AI skills as we've been talking about. As you look at, I guess I think about like the half-life of skills. I think about what skills, what innately human skills will stay, that people need to focus on. So I guess as you conduct this research and you're looking at data, I'm curious on the talent acquisition side. If we look at, if we've been looking at like how job descriptions themselves are changing to look for some of these skills, just like we used to put, Microsoft Office, or for me it was Lotus, the Lotus 123 and those kinds of tools back in the 90s. But are you? I guess my question is, are you also looking at future in demand skills and whether or not the quality of the recruiting pipeline is increasing in terms of their readiness to time to productivity and things like that?
I think one of the things with AI skills in particular is AI continues to advance in ways that obviate earlier skills. In some ways, there's really only one core skill with AI, which is deductive reasoning.
Okay.
Because if AI is consolidating all the information, you can just keep asking it information. You end up being more like a person who's sitting in front of a giant library and is no longer experiencing the friction of having to read all the books.
Right.
And so the more AI makes it like the Star Trek computer, the more that becomes the core skill for every other aspect.
Yeah.
In the interim, we're going to need to be able to have people be able to recognize hallucinations. How do you do that? Is that a thing that you can measure and assess, or is it you just hope that they do it?
Right.
It probably relate to things like conscientiousness and memory. So I think some of the assumptions about what makes for a good employee in jobs may change, just because now it's much more about editorial skills, the ability to not build from the bottom up, but go from the forest to the trees.
Yeah.
And so I think the way we're going to think about a lot of different roles is much more, are you a great editor, and not are you a great writer? But how do you become a great editor if you were never a writer?
Right.
I think that's going to be one of the big challenges, and one of the places where we're going to need universities to think about justifying teaching all these fundamental skills, even though people are going to say, but I'm never going to use that. It's like, well, yes, you are, but just not in this form.
Right. Yeah, I think about this a lot. My daughter's applying to college right now, and I know that colleges are moving. They're definitely moving faster than the K-12 school systems in the U.S. But in some cases, just anecdotally, I know sometimes they're not taking necessarily a strategic approach. They haven't fully sort of enabled, um, faculty in terms of using it not just for the way students,
There's a number.
study.
I mean, faculty has a number of concerns, both practical and ethical.
Yeah.
Like, is this a good thing that people don't need to know anything anymore because they can just look it up?
Yeah.
But at the same time, we use calculators. We don't make everybody be a master of math.
Right.
And so I think there's one of the pieces of research we're collectively going to need is to really understand what experiences people need to have to absorb baseline information and develop good ability to consume third party, which AI effectively will always be,
Yeah.
and evaluate that. And I think we're seeing a lot of people complaining about an erosion of critical thinking skills, which is fundamentally built by doing all that work to get to that point. So I think we need to think about people as, this is your earlier question of like, how do you do this human centered? You have to start with human strengths and limitations, and not try to force us to adapt to the machine, but use the machine to fill in our gaps.
Yeah. I guess I also think about, you want to make sure your students are learning, of course, and are they learning the right things? Are they learning to, think critically and strategically and have empathy and, all of these innately human things? But I also think, I feel like that sort of correlates to how we might do, pre-hire assessments and things like that. It's like, well, we can't police it. The detectors aren't a great solution.
The AI
Deterrence may not. Yeah. So the AI wars, like, how are you, like, do we need to redesign the assessment? And in the same way, faculty, academia may say, do we need to redesign the assignments to make sure that people clearly are in fact learning what we're
already seeing signs of organizations doing more in-person activities to cut you off from the computer, and trying to rethink about how do you do an assessment if it's a copy paste. I think there's an important question of, if it's something that you can so easily copy paste, it's probably not a good thing to be assessing in the first place.
Yeah.
So I think one of the problems that we're having is everybody's getting stuck on, how do I stop you from cheating, rather than, is this even a test worth taking? So I think one of the other challenges with AI as it exists now is it's a really good writing tool. It's not necessarily a great reference tool. So at scale, it still creates a lot of hallucinations and errors. And so the day you can count on whatever it puts out always being 100% accurate, it really does raise the question, do I need to know all that much because everything's at my fingertips?
Yeah.
Now you almost have to know twice as much, because you need to be able to see the errors embedded in lots of good context.
So I get a little bit, I mean, overall, I'm bullish on all of this, and I guess I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll work through some of these things. But um, I do sometimes worry about that aspect, and the fact that, because anytime you say, oh, well, now you have the power of your best, people analytics, data scientists at your fingertips is in a self-service way. Well, if I don't know enough, I don't know if I'm asking the right questions. I don't know if I'm asking it in the right way, and I don't know if the response is 100% trustworthy. Hopefully, if it's an internal tool and it's been, trained and proprietary data and it's been thoroughly evaluated and whatever, but you still run. I don't know. I just feel like there's still the potential for some.
I think there's definitely still a need for expertise. I think one of the things as we look forward to the future, I doubt we're going to go into an instant vibe coding for everybody world. It's
Right.
just, it's not practical. There's too many conditions that you need to know about a particular domain to do it right. Like I think of all the times that tech has invaded very technical domains like medicine and not achieved the goals that they were setting out to do because they didn't actually understand the processes. They just did a surface thing and built a tool.
Right.
And so I think we need to really be thinking about what do we want people to be doing and focus in on if I'm trying to make sure that people are good at, this job, what is it that is actually the job and what is it that the AI is going to either workflow or look up for me?
Yep.
And then like push that to the side and then focus in on we need you to do this and how do we assess that human skill? Is it negotiating? Is it relationship building? Is it the ability to just know that when you're doing an analysis of a psychological survey, everything's supposed to correlate, which is actually a moment I had with a data scientist who had no psychological training, but had lots of statistical training.
Okay.
And she was very upset that our survey, all the items correlated. And I was like, that's what a assessment.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, that's what it's supposed to be. Yeah. I think we'll see that pop up if we don't embed AI tools and platforms that also have some of the old templates and examples. So I think we're going to go through an intermediate stage of tools like your HRIS or other systems saying like, here's your standard dashboard, and here's the way you uplift that so you can imagine properly and see, is it using the same data in the same way, or has it wandered off into some other land?
Got it. No, really interesting. Well, this has been great. Thank you so much for taking time to speak with me. It's really, really interesting work you're doing. And so, best of luck and enjoy the rest of the show.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. We'll see you next time.